As a kid?
As a kid.
I was probably a little rambunctious. Really creative kid. I was really big into art and stuff, and then I got into collegiate wrestling. I was like in 6th, 7th grade, and that kind of led me down on the path that I am here today. I'd probably say I have a vivid memory of like Chris Jericho's debut against The Rock, and then like shortly after that, Kurt Angle ended up going into the mix, and me being a collegiate wrestler at the time, I totally gravitated towards Angle, obviously, being an Olympian and everything else, and that's, I think, when I really, truly fell in love with it. I did have an aha moment, though, of when I wanted to be a professional wrestler. Essentially what happened was, in 9th grade at junior high school, we had to do a big presentation to get kids involved in the team and join the high school team. And so they had this big assembly. We're on stage wearing our little tight singlet outfits. You know how kids are, and everyone there from the entire school's there, all the girls I had crushes on, all the cool guys that I wasn't a part of whatsoever. And so everyone's in this giant assembly, and we go on stage. You know how kids are because you're in the tight little singlet. So the teachers are like running around trying to yell and find out these kids heckling me and my buddy Bobby Barraza doing this assembly. And then for whatever reason, all of a sudden we just started doing every WWF finisher we knew at the time. So we'd like Stone Cold Stunners and F5s and Rock Bottoms. And the referees started doing 3 counts. And so our coach was super pissed off, standing to the side of the stage, like just venting and fuming. But he calmed down because we ended up getting like 15 people to join the team, which was unheard of at the time. And then one day later, they all quit because we weren't teaching pile drivers or choke slams or anything. But it worked for a little bit. Well, at 16 years old, I started training at the Chicago Wrestle Factory in Philadelphia. And I would actually like have to drive, an hour to 2 hours from Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. And then every weekend, they started doing some traveling shows. So all of a sudden, I was gone Friday to Monday, having to finish homework while doing all the ring crew and paying my dues and everything. So I definitely worked my way up from underneath, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I got the benefit of, at 16 years old, having professional wrestlers, grown men that I consider to be brothers. A lot of people tend to debut after a year and a half, but because I was juggling wrestling in high school and college, I kind of started going more sporadically, so it took 3 long years to debut. And I was kind of proud of myself, because not once I ever think about quitting. When I debuted, I was essentially just a collegiate wrestler. Didn't have much personality whatsoever. I don't think you could distinguish me from one other person on the show. But I guess probably about 2 years ago is really when I started coming to my own. I lost my hair in a hair versus hair match, and I went from being the cocky, over-the-top Tim Donst to more of the brutal, using explicit language, and just talking about the negative aspects of professional wrestling. And I kind of like similar to the wrestler, perhaps. And I think people really started to gravitate towards it because it was different at the time. Because here you have all these guys talking about how they're the best wrestler on the planet, right? They're the best one in the ring. They're the greatest of this, of this. And I'm there saying, no, I'm a piece of shit. I'm going to do what I have to do to get through this. I don't want to be here. And I think highlighting the negative aspects of wrestling sometimes, even though I absolutely love this sport, but I think by highlighting the negatives, people tend to respect the sport more, because when they watch wrestling, they just think about the promos or the moves or the money or the travel, the girls, whatever. But in actuality, you're gone away from your friends, you're gone away from your family. Every match can be your last. There's a lot of politicking, there's a lot of bullshitting, there's a lot of empty envelopes for paydays. And even with all that, I absolutely love this sport. So it was a week before I was set to wrestle for AIW again in Cleveland. I was a heavyweight champion. I went from this bottom guy all the way to the top of the card. They helped me grow as a human being, finally get that championship run that I've always wanted in any company. And they're the first ones who believed in me, so I felt that it was very warranted and surreal to be the face of this company that believed in me so much from the get-go. So I was getting ready for a run for that. The next day I was debuting for CZW here in Philadelphia, which was the first independent wrestling show I ever saw when I was 16. Another reason why I wanted to be a wrestler. So for 10 years, I wanted to be in this company, and finally that was set to happen. And then unfortunately, a week prior, I was about to go to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to see my mom for the first time in years, and I pissed a bunch of blood. I went to the ER. I was there for about 8 hours before they gave me a room, and that's when they diagnosed me with a cancer. At the time, they thought it was spreading through my bladder. Hopefully, that doesn't look like it's the case as of now. So this coming Tuesday, March 24th, they're going to remove the kidney. Theoretically, that should solve the issue. But that's when the original doctor came in and told me I'd never wrestle again. Wrestling is such an escapism to me, has been my entire life. No matter what bullshit's going on with bills, girls, not having a college degree or a financial background, when you're in that ring, that's all you're thinking about is that emotional connection to the crowd and the art of professional wrestling. And so when he gave me the biggest blow of my life that I had cancer and I can't have this escapism, my mind just kind of exploded, as did my heart, and I was completely devastated. It was the worst feeling of my entire life. And that too is included to the night before, feeling like I was getting stabbed in the kidney with a hot knife over and over again, the worst pain of my entire life, and yet somehow this doctor's words were more painful than my physical injury. Theoretically, a knee injury should take me out, or I should get dropped on my head and too many concussions, not something so uncontrollable at such a young age that shouldn't even be a concern. And then that's when so I was under the illusion that somehow magically I was going to still wrestle Friday and Saturday. That obviously got taken away from me. So AIW told me that I could keep the championship belt during this 2-month recovery period, possibly longer, depending on if it has spread and I have to be in chemo. But I didn't feel like that was right because, I've helped AIW out so much, they've helped me out, that they're really about to cusp and blow up on the independent wrestling scene. And it completely breaks my heart that it looks like I won't be there for this hard work payoff that them and all the boys there have been a part of for so long, this journey. But certainly, if I can't wrestle, I shouldn't be the face of that company. So there's a lot of hungrier guys in the back that deserve that spotlight if I can't do it. So I decided to give up the title on Friday, and then CZW obviously never happened. So I felt like it was important to write a blog telling people who weren't there in AIW that night exactly what was going on. Well, basically, I just summed up everything that happened. I told people what I was going through mentally. I told people that I loved and I thanked all of them. And that, at the end of the day, if God forbid this was the end of me, that's completely okay with me, because this whole situation has really opened me up to the idea that you have these poor kids with cancer who won't make it to be 12, 13, 14 years old, who never go to prom, never have a first girlfriend. And, at 27 years old, I've lived a very great life because of wrestling and because of the fans and my travels and being 16, a part of such a great company, a great industry, that I have nothing to complain about if, God forbid, tomorrow is taken away from me, because there's a lot of other kids who won't get that opportunity ever in their entire life. But I wrote that blog post, and then Mick Foley happened to see it, a guy that I've idolized my entire life, a guy that, at 10, 12 years old, I'd watch his promos and replicate them in the mirror because I wanted to be just like him. I wanted to believe that intensity, that craziness. And then for him to reach out to me was surreal because, any wrestler could have reached out to me possibly, but then to be one of my favorite guys ever of all time was just super mind-blowing. And from there, he posted about it. That blew up. A guy by the name of Dr. Robert Quarles, who is an ex-WWE doctor, happened to see that post and then contacted me. So all these what-if situations started snowballing and happening, and he completely contradicted my original doctor's diagnosis. He believes that it is possible to wrestle with one kidney. He just gave me so much hope, and that's all I've ever needed my entire life is just hope. I've always been the underdog. I've always been a fighter. People have told me I'd never wrestle in my entire life since I was 16. You're too small. You're too this. You're too this. I've proved them wrong each time, and all I need is just a little bit of hope, and I'm going to come out on top just like I always have. In professional wrestling, if you're not in front of the camera, you're probably going to be forgotten sooner or later because you're just kind of a spoke in the wheel of this business, because as quickly as you've come into your own, you can be quickly taken out of the picture. And so Friday was probably the first AIW show that I've missed in probably 5+ years ever. So you can imagine how hard it was to see the show go on without me physically being there. But I guess there was a Cancer Fears Donst chant that broke out. There were signs. So knowing that a bunch of people out there in Cleveland were thinking about me and didn't forget about me just yet really meant a lot to me.
You gonna beat it?
I think I'm going to beat it. I'll kick out on one.